I'm Kathy, standing in the middle of my father's study, the storm outside raging against the windows. I watched as his face turned ashen. He stared at the phone in front of him, the color draining from his features as he read the subject line of the email I'd slid across the table. Submission confirmation. Suspicious activity report. It was a moment of sweet vindication, but it had been a long time coming. Let me take you back to how we got here. My father, Victor, was a man consumed by power and money. He ran a large real estate company, but his greed and mismanagement had led it to the brink of collapse. 3 years ago, on the eve of my wedding to my husband, Leo, he decided to show me who was in control. He owned the venue through a shell company and canceled the lease at the last minute. I had to marry Leo in a Rush City Hall ceremony, wearing a dress I bought off the rack. He thought this humiliation would break me, but instead, it spurred me on. Leo and I used the money we'd saved for the wedding as a down payment on a rundown apartment building in the suburbs. With hard work and determination, we turned it into a successful boutique hotel. Over the next few years, we expanded our business, and I became the CEO of a growing hotel chain. But my father's actions didn't stop there. 2 years ago, my mother, Emily, fell ill. There was an experimental treatment available in France, but it was expensive. I didn't have enough cash on hand, so I asked my father for help. He told me the company was facing financial difficulties and couldn't spare the money. I believed him and sat by my mother's bedside as she passed away. A few weeks after her funeral, my younger brother, Ryan, posted a picture on social media of a brand new luxury sports car, a gift from our father. It was then that I realized he had chosen to buy a car for Ryan over saving my mother's life. That was the moment my grief turned to cold, hard determination. I hired forensic accountants to dig into my father's finances. I watched as he leveraged the company, the family home, and his reputation to keep up appearances. And then, one day, he called me to his study. "Sign these papers, or I make one call, and your hotel licenses will be revoked by the end of the week," he said, shoving a contract in my face. He sat at the head of the table, swirling his whiskey, thinking I was still the scared girl he'd kicked out years ago. Leo was sitting in the corner, at a small table. My father had sneered at him, saying that help doesn't sit with the bosses. Leo just sat there, calm and supportive, giving me a subtle nod. Ryan was there too, nervously tapping on his phone, wearing an expensive suit. He was the reason my father needed a bailout, though he probably didn't understand the full extent of his actions. I refused to sign. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out a notice of assignment. 2 weeks ago, I acquired your debt portfolio, I told him. His face paled as I explained how I'd bought his debt from a predatory lender he'd turned to after being blacklisted by the banks. He thought he had one last trick up his sleeve. He pulled out his tablet and showed me a spreadsheet of cash deposits into my hotel accounts. He claimed it was structuring a federal felony and threatened to send the file to the FBI if I didn't forgive his debt. I looked at Ryan and asked if he'd made the deposits. He admitted that he had because our father had told him I was in trouble and that it was a way to help me anonymously. I realized then that my father had used Ryan as a weapon, grooming him for this moment. But I was ready. I reached for my phone and pulled up an email from 45 days ago. It was the receipt for a suspicious activity report I'd filed with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. I'd flagged the cash deposits as soon as they hit the structuring threshold and reported them immediately. "You tried to trap me in the dark, but I turned on the lights," I told my father. "You've just confessed to a federal crime, and this house is now evidence." His arrogance crumbled, and fear took over. He stammered and tried to deny it, but it was too late. I gave him an ultimatum: leave now, or face the FBI in the morning. He hesitated for a moment, then grabbed his coat and fled into the storm. Ryan sat there, stunned and heartbroken. "You set me up," he whispered. We left the house without looking back. On the drive back to the city, I felt a weight lift off my chest. I decided to assign the deed of the house to the bank. I didn't want the money. I just wanted to be free from my father's toxic legacy. I texted my lawyer to represent Ryan and get him a deal. Then I blocked everyone else. I knew that legacy isn't about what you build. It's about what you refuse to carry. I left behind my father's debt, his shame, and his collapse, and I drove away with my integrity intact.